Cormac McCarthy's Border Trilogy is a powerful and evocative take on the modern Western. The first book in the trilogy is All the Pretty Horses, first published in 1992. It propelled McCarthy to huge critical acclaim and success for the first time. It tells the story of John Grady Cole, a 16-year-old cowboy who holds a romantic, almost mythical vision for how the West should be. At the start of the book, his grandfather has died, and the ranch on which Grady was raised is going to be sold. In this new age, it is no longer cattle, but rather oil that is the more lucrative business. The ranch was built by Grady's ancestors during the pioneering days of the West, and it being passed from the Grady family reflects the passing of the age of the West as a whole, one which was defined by cowboys, ranchers, horses and cattle, and of course the occasional gunfight or two. Retaining his ideal life of the cowboy, Grady travels south into Mexico with his friend Rawlins in hopes of living out this romanticized existence of freedom and opportunity in an untamed land, a land that has not yet been reached by American expansion and civilization. In Mexico, Grady finds work on a large ranch, has an affair with the landowner's daughter, gets arrested and tortured by corrupt lawmen, is almost assassinated, kills a man and holds a police captain as hostage. His situation gets more and more dire the longer he stays there. The tale ends with Grady returning to Texas to find his father dead, his home gone and his friend Rawlins distant. Grady rides off into the sunset, battered and bruised while still somehow clinging on to this dying world of the American West. Protagonist John Grady retains a mindset throughout the entire novel of a romantic cowboy life. A life where stoicism, competence, hard work and skill, honesty and friendship are key. Where freedom is life. Externally, however, the world itself is a harsh and unforgiving landscape. The cynical, savage people who own it are driven only by their desperate need to survive. Whilst visually stunning, this land is dangerous and fractured. A romantic cannot hope to survive here. John Grady clings on to his vision despite everything he sees and goes through. The corrupt police officers of Mexico, a woman whom he desperately loves but cannot have, blood and death. After everything, Grady still maintains his internal cowboy code and idealism of the West. Really, the tragedies of the novel stem from our hero's personal desires. To begin with, it is his search for this romantic lifestyle in the first place that leads him and his friends into the trouble they find themselves in by crossing the border into Mexico. Secondly, it is only through his quest to gain the heart of his forbidden love that he winds up in Mexican prison, being tortured. Finally, by trying to escape on this idealised adventure, his friendship ultimately breaks down with Rawlins, his father dies with him absent, and his ranch, back home in Texas, is sold anyway. All the Pretty Horses almost tries to warn of the dangers of living one's life according to passionate dreams and beliefs. In a realistic world where survival is all that matters, following romantic ideals only brings disaster. But it is only as the story unravels that this becomes apparent. The Crossing is the second novel, published in 1994. It is set 10 years prior to the events of All the Pretty Horses, in 1939, and concerns the period just before and during World War II. A new protagonist is introduced this time around by the name of Billy Parham, though he too is a 16-year-old cowboy, as was John Grady. The name of the book comes from the 3 border crossings into Mexico that Billy travels over the course of the narrative. The Crossing is written a little differently to All the Pretty Horses. Its structure is somewhat episodic, featuring loosely related storylines for Billy to follow, occasionally alongside his brother Boyd. As each of these play out, the romantic values steadily decline within each of them. The first of these is the hunting expedition of a wolf that has been terrorizing Billy's family farm. Upon finally capturing the wolf, he bonds with it and decides to let it loose in the Mexican mountains. The imagery is very descriptive and natural, reeling in the reader to be immersed in the wilderness of the West. Here is one example as McCarthy describes the night sky. The earliest stars coined out of the dark, coping to the south hanging in the dead wickerwood of the trees along the river. It is wild, yet emotive and beautiful. The second section is Billy's task to recapture family horses stolen from his homestead. Again, Billy heads to Mexico, this time with his brother Boyd. During an altercation, Boyd is shot through the chest and badly wounded. However, he is nursed back to health with Billy's aid and later runs away with the young woman. This second story could possibly be seen as something of a warning to Billy. The final episode is the bleakest of the lot. Billy learns that Boyd has been killed and so travels once more into Mexico to return his brother's body home. Upon finding Boyd's grave, Billy is attacked by bandits, his horse is seriously injured, and Boyd's remains are defiled. Billy is last seen crying after shooing away an injured dog, in stark contrast to his bonding with the wolf earlier in the novel. He is broken after receiving no redemption or peace after the hardships he has faced and the things he has lost. This seems to be a common trait of not only the three novels from the Border Trilogy, but many of McCarthy's works in general. The third and final book in the Border Trilogy, Cities of the Plain, is set in 1952 and unites the protagonists of All the Pretty Horses and The Crossing. John Grady Cole and Billy Parham are established as close friends at the novel's onset. Cities of the Plain is undoubtedly the darkest of the trio, featuring much more consequential violence than earlier in the series. The original romantic nature found in All the Pretty Horses is practically non-existent this time around, with every event seeming to pull farther away from the idealistic Old West. Essentially, the story is as follows. John and Billy make little money but enjoy life on the open range, as they always did in their own novels. The future of the cattle industry is thrown into question after devastating droughts. The West, as they know it, is vanishing. John Grady falls in love with a prostitute from Juarez in Mexico, and they set to marry. However, she is murdered by another man before they do. Grady confronts the killer in a vicious knife fight to the death, and though he is the victor, he is mortally wounded and eventually dies with Billy at his side. The final section simply details what happened to Billy, concluding John's death over the following decades. But Grady's passing effectively ends any notion of a romanticised Old West, and therefore, this discussion of it. I'll end here with a brief overview of the three novels in relation to each other regarding this topic.